Let's get started. I gave an extra minute. If everyone could just make sure you're muted while we go through the presentation. We did have a glitch when we did this at noon. My colleague Alfreda Grace is here and may be able to help me if we have a glitch again. Hopefully not tonight. We've had several meetings, and if you're like me, maybe put your cell phone on silence. So I apologize for that. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go through this PowerPoint presentation. As I shared, you will have an opportunity to ask questions once I am done presenting. So here we go. So first, welcome. We're excited that you're here to learn more about the fellowship. The info session objectives are that all of you will be inspired by the legacy of Maria Whelan and understand the why behind the Maria Whelan Leadership Institute. You will learn how you will professionally benefit from participating in the 9-month Early Childhood Emerging Leaders Fellowship. And you will be able to learn how to take the next step in applying or referring a fellow to participate. So we are going through the agenda. You'll find out about who is Maria. You'll learn about, have an overview of the fellowship. You'll learn how to apply, and we'll have a Q&A session, and then I'll let you know about next steps. I say all this with the caveat that I have been meeting and leading meetings since 9:15 this morning. So if strange words come out of my mouth, it's just a reflection of how sleepy I'm getting. So I apologize in advance. So how the Maria Whelan Leadership Institute came to be. Maria Whelan led Illinois Action for Children from 2000 to 2020. After her untimely passing in 2020, a design team of over 20 of Maria's closest friends and colleagues banded together to fundraise and launch the Institute in her honor. Maria believed deeply in investing in the next generation of early childhood professionals to ensure we have a bench of effective leaders and advocates fighting with and for our state's most underserved children.
Hello, this is Maria Whelan, President and CEO at Illinois Action for Children. I hope everyone's doing well and having a fabulous day.
Just presents.
I don't think we understood how much of a barrier deep poverty is in terms of engaging families and creating opportunities. Almost 2/3 of the 3- and 4-year-olds in these very poor communities have no access to classroom-based preschool, Head Start, or child care programs.
The kids who need it the most.
The kids who need it the most. Thank you for all that you do each and every day to advance our our mission to be a catalyst for organizing, supporting, and developing strong families and powerful communities where children matter most. I hope that all of you know how much the word matters.
Okay. Let's see if we can go back to the slide presentation. That gives you a synopsis, of course, of who Maria was, and her legacy continues here at Illinois Action for Children. So let's talk now about the fellowship. So what is it? The program will engage 20 mid-level early childhood and early care professionals to develop their leadership, network, and advocacy skills through a 9-month part-time fellowship. It's designed for mid-level ECEC professionals with at least 3 years of experience. It will be done in a hybrid, virtual, and in-person format, so it may vary month to month. It will take place starting in June, and it will carry through the month of February. And it will also take place, it says Friday afternoons, that's actually somewhat of a typo. It'll actually be Friday during the day. Why are we doing this? It's because the future and quality of our ECEC system in Illinois depends on talented and diverse leaders who will push for systemic change for children and families that are most under-resourced. So the main components of the fellowship include those monthly sessions. They will be facilitated by experts in areas of career and advocacy and leadership development. The fellows will be expected to create a leadership development plan personal to them. They will be expected to work in groups to create community action projects. And they will do a site visit to the state capitol or a local public meeting. There will be coalition engagement. There's actually, we have a We the Village coalition that we run at Illinois Action for Children, but there's Raising Illinois. And there's all of a sudden the third coalition is out of my mind at the moment, but there will be opportunity for involvement and participation in coalitions. And it will be a safe space to process learning with other cohort members and facilitators. So the target audience for the fellowship are current ECEC mid-level professionals in Illinois with at least 3 years experience in the field of early care and education. Examples of cross-sector professional titles for this cohort, this will actually be the second cohort, are ECEC coaches, assistant directors, education coordinators, nonprofit leaders, school district or government associate manager level roles, infant toddler quality specialists, Head Start teachers and educators, family child care providers. You will need to have 10 hours per month to commit to the fellowship. I was asked the question today, what does that mean? One Friday out of the month, you will commit. Typically, the times are from about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the afternoon to give folks the time to drive to the location and return home. And then there are little assignments that take place on your own time throughout the month. So it's actually about 10 hours of work time is the best way to describe that 10 hours. Individuals should have a strong desire to grow their career and impact policy within the early childhood field. They should, we are going to prioritize, professionals who identify as Black, Latino, Latina, Latinx, and or Hispanic, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, Desi American, people of color, first-generation college graduates, and living and or working within communities with limited to no access to economic resources. In addition, we are looking for geographical diversity. So we're looking at urban, rural, and suburban settings where these professionals work and live. And we are also looking for geographical diversity throughout the state. It was heavily a northern population in the first cohort. We had a couple from central Illinois, but not representation from southern Illinois, which is really important to us. So we look at all those factors when we are evaluating an application. So topics that will be covered in the facilitated fellowship sessions include under professional leadership, values-driven leadership, how to share your story, setting 3 to 5 year career goals, building your network and relationship development, branding yourself as a leader, understanding project management, how to build and support teams is important, resource management, budgeting, fiscal management, grants and fundraising, all those things you need to know about to be a well-rounded leader when you're in this field. And then under advocacy leadership, we're looking at community organizing 101 and building power for public change. Illinois ECEC Policy 101, the history of systemic inequity. Understanding the ECEC landscape, who the players are, and all the different funding structures that fund our early care system here in Illinois, and working in coalition to execute advocacy tactics, such as legislative meetings, social and traditional media, and hosting house meetings. So those are the things, the types of things we try to cover within the fellowship program. The outcomes for the fellowship, what we hope fellows will learn and take away from this experience. We hope that they will understand the history of inequity within the early care and education system and have a clarified vision for how to solve for those inequities through a career within the system, create leadership goals and make measurable progress in the next 3 to 5 years. Examples of goals for a fellow might be to get a promotion, self-advocate for a pay raise, engage in a coalition, take on additional responsibilities in their current role, or join a council or a board and serve in that way within their community. Engage in advocacy strategies that will advance ECEC policy priorities closer to passage or implementation, and feel a sense of belonging to a strengthened and enduring community of advocates with their fellow cohort members, program facilitators, speakers, and mentors. So what you need to do to apply, you need to complete the fellowship application form by May 3rd. A link to the application form will be circulated tomorrow. You'll get an email if you registered for the fellowship. We send it out. In the application itself includes 3 short essay responses, and essay is even overdoing it. We're only looking for a few sentences that really describe how you feel about some issues in early care and education. And then it includes 2 references. One needs to be your direct supervisor, so we know that you have permission to actually give up that Friday workday every month where you'll participate in the fellowship. If you are a family child care provider, we ask that you ask another fellow colleague that may be also a family child care provider to send in as one of your references. And then the last step in your application, which is the part that we know people may overlook, is that you need to email us your resume, and that should be sent to emergingleaders2023@actforchildren.org. So the application review timeline, the information sessions were today. This is the second one. The first one was at noon. The application window is April 4th. It closes May 3rd at the close of business. The application interviews, there will be an interview session that will be no more than 30 minutes. And they will run from May 15th to May 26th. So we'll be scheduling them back to back to back to meet who the applicants are, hear more about your background and perspective, and ask you more about why you want to be a part of this fellowship. All applicants will be notified by June 2nd, whether they have been selected, and the fellowship begins in mid-June. So this is our time for questions. Let me stop sharing. Did not do that well. And there we go. And join you so I can see everyone. Before I start to answer questions, there is some information that isn't on the slides. There is a stipend of $3,000 for folks that fully participate in the fellowship. It is mandatory that you do attend all of the sessions. The stipend is paid at the end of the fellowship period once we receive back evaluations. The other thing to note is that you do need to work currently full-time in the field of early care and education in order to participate in the fellowship. That is one of the other questions that came up. And then in terms of the location, it will vary depending on the geographical location of the cohort members. So most of the programming was in the north. We did meet at different facilities. Malcolm X was one, SEIU's offices. We met at Lakeshore Learning in Tinley Park. And so we really met in various locations depending on what the topic may have been for the particular session. That helped determine what facility we may want to use to house it. I want to share too that we did do the visit to Springfield. They are not in session, unfortunately, when we went to Springfield. The timing of the fellowship is such that we want to make sure folks feel grounded and understand policy and advocacy for that visit to be more meaningful. But we did have a legislator there that met with and spoke to the group, the first cohort, and really shared sort of a little bit about how bills work and how legislation works in the General Assembly and why it's so important to reach out to your legislative representatives to express your views and your concerns, et cetera, because they are looking to hear from their constituents as they make decisions about what bills to file or to vote for. So I think that is it. I will start to answer questions. I see one in the chat. For in-person meetings, what COVID cautions are put in place, masking or rapid testing before meeting. So we actually follow current guidelines. So there is even masking has now even been lifted in early care centers. For those that are comfortable. So it really is based on your comfortability. So if you want to wear a mask, you're welcome to. I will say most people are not wearing masks any longer, but we do have no requirements around masking, testing, or vaccinations for the purposes of participating in the cohort at this time, because all of those requirements and mitigations have been lifted on the state level as well as in the city of Chicago. What usually are the times for the Zoom interviews? So the Zoom interviews follow the same time, that 10 to 3 on the Friday that's selected for that month. So you really have to, that needs to be a day you are not working. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. We recognize that you working with early childhood professionals, that you may have a classroom you're responsible for. The funding that we have will reimburse for substitutes for classrooms. It will reimburse your travel expenses, your mileage. If you're far enough away from the site that you need to spend the night in a hotel. We cover those expenses as well. If you have young children at home and you need a sitter, we will cover and reimburse those expenses as well. We really want to remove barriers so that folks can, in fact, participate and be fully engaged. But it does require that full engagement. So even if it's virtual, it's impossible to really be engaged and be trying to work and answer email and be in your office and thinking that you're going to be able to do whatever over lunch, et cetera. We really think it's important that you take advantage of the networking opportunity and jump right in, which I think is difficult to do if you're kind of split-minded, if you're trying to participate. Let's see. Oh, no, it's one Friday out of the month. And it's usually a mid-month Friday. So a Friday around the 15th of the month. Last year, we did start on June 10th because that was the death anniversary of Maria Whelan. And so we wanted to honor her on that day, and we had the design team come and meet the fellows, et cetera. It was really touching to be able to do that. And they were able to share how they knew her, why this was important, both to the field of early care and education, but also why it would be important to all of the inaugural group of fellows as well. But otherwise, it'll be around the 15th, that Friday of every month. What did people in the first cohort do after they participated? How did they take what they learned and put it into action? That's a great question. So we, that inaugural group, I was sharing with the other info session, about 1/3 of them all have moved into other jobs. We're actually getting gathering information on that right now. And a lot of them attributed it to them learning more about themselves as leaders and growing in their leadership. And so they really felt confident to take a leap and to try something new. And so that is very exciting. That was not actually an outcome that we were really going for. Our goal was to really get folks more focused on what they can do to help create systems change right where they are, whether it's joining a coalition, a local council, a board, maybe starting to sit on or listen in on some of the state meetings that happen around early care and education. Those were kind of our thoughts. I guess we were aiming kind of low, but a number of them felt that they felt empowered to shift a little bit in what they were doing and pursue leadership positions that will help them have more influence. The other thing that I think was key is that with the overall evaluation, we've not fully analyzed it. The reception was incredibly positive. What I offered the first info session, because someone said, well, could we, get a number of one of them and call them and hear from them how they experienced it and ask them questions. I did not think it would be appropriate for me to give 100 people someone's cell phone number or email address. But if you have questions that you have directly for the first cohort around their experiences or how they managed a certain thing, or why the cohort was important to them, et cetera, and what they got out of it. If you email the Emerging Leaders 2023 at actforchildren.org, email your questions, we will compile that in a smart sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, and I can have it shared with the first cohort and let them answer those questions. And then we can email it back out to those of you that attended the info sessions, so you can see their response. But their feedback overall was really, really encouraging. They're a pretty tight-knit group. They definitely still communicate. For some reason, I'm blanking on what it's called, but the function where you can email, group chat. I just cannot think of the name of it right now, but they have that and they talk amongst themselves. I think even they've shared job openings with one another, et cetera. And I think they're even more committed to stay in the field, which is what we want. We know that we're losing a lot of educators to other occupations and other professions because of low pay and lack of equity, et cetera. And so our goal is, we can, as an advocacy organization, we continue to advocate for better pay and benefits and environments for those that are in the field, because we want what's best for children and families. But we also know that our voices are louder when we're more unified and folks understand the importance of doing their part in reaching out to legislators to affect change. Let's see. What's something that worked well during the first cohort and something you all would like to change for this upcoming fellowship? Okay. So one thing that worked well, I actually think the trip to Springfield went really well. That is one I did not participate in personally. They left the Chicago area around 7 in the morning, or 6 or 7 in the morning. And they went out, they did a tour of the Capitol. They met with the legislators. I want to say Tim Duncan, but I may be making that up. Again, he shared with them the importance of talking to your legislators, gave them guidance on how to do that, let them ask questions. So even though they couldn't do face-to-face visits with their legislators, it was really helpful for them to get an understanding of how it works in Springfield. And then they went to the Abraham Lincoln Museum, and they were able to tour that museum. They had lunch there. They had some folks come in and talk to them in general about what it means to run an organization, how to do that well, looking at finances and budgeting and why obviously those things are important, how to pursue grant dollars and to be thinking about all of that. And so they had their training there, and then they came back at the end of the day and came back around 6 or 7 in the evening. I think that was really successful because they'd already gone through Community Building 101 and Advocacy 101. And so when they went there, they could see like, wow, this is how that works. I think the challenge for us is we ended up doing the final day in February. We actually combined the final session with the graduation ceremony, and it was hectic. And it went pretty long because the fellows also presented their community action projects. So there were 3 groups, and they talked about their projects. And I think they would have appreciated more time. I think that's some of the feedback we're getting to work on their project. They did have time between, let's see, I think the January and February session. But if we'd waited to do graduation and added on a month, like maybe March, or if we'd extended the day, like we thought we were going to be able to get the luncheon and all of that done in a short period of time. And we got it all done, but we were probably an hour over. So lesson learned about just making sure there was more time. We'd shorten that session as well, thinking we could get it all done. So that's a lesson learned. But I think overall, all the components of the program, we had a great facilitator who pulled it all together, were very well received. We also do strength assessments. They did strengths assessment at the very, like I think maybe even before the first session or right at the first session, where they were able to learn more about themselves and what are their strengths as a leader. And then from that foundation of strength, look at what are the areas where they needed to grow as individuals and what are the things they could do to get to where they wanted to be as leaders. And I think that gave them the foundation where they could build and grow throughout the fellowship. So we've seen that as very helpful. Okay, are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute as well. This is a small group, so don't be shy. Nothing, no questions at all. I answered everything already. I can't believe it.
I have a question. So you said it's for ECE mid-level professionals. I'm sorry, but what do you mean by mid-level?
Mid-level. So that means, so we gave some examples of what we think mid-level is. But I think mid-level is someone that is not already like if you're already leading in a significant way, then you are more qualified to participate, let's say, in the Barbara Bowman Leadership Institute. So like there are other fellowship programs that work with current leaders in the field of early care and education. So we would direct folks like that to seek out those opportunities. This is really for, like maybe a classroom teacher that's never done any advocacy work, right? But needs to, well, not needs to, but wants to understand how they can contribute to systemic change in their current role as a teacher, because they see the need being in the classroom or they're experiencing low wages or whatever it may be. So you've been in the field at least 3 years, but if you've been in the field, we did have a family childcare provider who had done family childcare for many, many years, but then retired sort of, and went over to work for SEIU, for example. And in that role was helping with some training with providers, but wasn't really in a leadership role, but was looking to lead as someone that had that foundation. And so that person was a member of the co-op. So even though she'd been in the field for a long, long time,
Mhm.
she was still an emerging leader in that sense, right? So
Mhm.
for me, I have the honor of being over programs at Illinois Action for Children. It would be appropriate for me to be a part of the fellowship, right? Because I'm already in a leadership role.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some samples. I'm not sure if does that sound clear, or did I just muddy the
Well,
waters?
yes, but I just feel like maybe this is too much for me. Like I don't feel like a leader. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
was thinking, okay, it sounds like many of the vocabulary that you're using, I'm not familiar, and um, like I'm not into policies and politics and all those things. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not a mid-level. Maybe I'm not there yet.
Well, yeah, we don't expect you to have arrived, right? That's the distinction for those of you, and you guys are welcome to look up the Barbara Bowman Leadership Fellowship. That's, and actually the folks that created that gave us a lot of input to how we created our own, because we aren't competing, right? We are looking at folks that are interested in doing more, interested in learning more, maybe a little frustrated with how the system here in Illinois, because of funding streams, is really disjointed. And so it may make it harder to do your work, because you know, especially if you're a teacher in the classroom and you've got to do, you know, specific, you've got to fill out specific paperwork so that you're making sure that you're following the protocols for the Office of Head Start. And then you've also got to fill out different paperwork to follow the protocols for Preschool for All. And so it's like you're doing dual work or dual entry, because all of the systems want their own type of paperwork from you and a different way to input. That might drive you crazy. And so you're like, why isn't this more of a system? I'm caring for the child in the same way, regardless of funding stream. Like, why don't they believe it, for an example? So there needs to be better integration alignment on the state level. You might see it as you're working with families and let's see, an example might be COVID. You're working with families and really struggling. Their families are really struggling, and you're trying to figure out, you know, why aren't there more resources for them to support them with housing needs or food insecurity, and how do we do something about that? The example I gave at noon, and I see your hand, Yolanda, just so you know, at noon, was around early intervention and how we know there are just not enough practitioners in early intervention. And so how do we continue to retain those that are currently in the field as early interventionists? And then how do we attract? And we know that funding stream was stagnant for many years, and they've just started to see increases, but we know that that reimbursement rate was incredibly low. And so it's an opportunity to start to say to IDHS and to other state groups, hey, look, kids aren't getting needed services. If they were getting services when we identified that this child had a delay when they were 8 months old, you know, in some cases, by the time they're 3, there's no longer a documented delay. They don't even need special needs. Like, we know that if we catch kids early enough, we can really support them so they are kindergarten ready. We know that waiting till 3 for them to hit special ed, that's still great. That's better than 5, but it's not as optimal as if we got them when they were 6 weeks or old, or 6 months old, or even a year old or 2 years old. And so that's an example of something that might get you riled up, where where in this fellowship, you have the opportunity to learn how you can advocate for families that are being impacted by a lack of access to EI services. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Before I get to you, Yolanda, there's a Jess, you put something in the chat that looks like a link and a JPEG, but it doesn't show me anything. Do you mind telling me, is it something we're supposed to see?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Someone private messaged me their questions instead of to you. Then I screenshot it to you. It was,
Oh,
will there be a tentative schedule for the Friday meeting so we can plan ahead? That person just left, so maybe you don't need to answer.
oh, you know what, was it Arlene? Because now I'm seeing.
Yes.
Yeah, so yes, there will be a schedule once we, so there's a couple things. Once we get through all of the application process and we select the fellows, at that point, we will look at, the facilitator will work with the group to figure out what Fridays around mid-month work best for the group, because it really is mandatory and important that you participate. Yolanda. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for hosting. So you pretty much answered the question that I had, about what if you have people that are in leadership, but may feel a little intimidated, just like Ms. Esmeralda just said, with the use of the vocabulary and things that they're unfamiliar with. They may have the passion and the drive to want to be more impactful and learn more, but just maybe a little on the shy side and maybe just a little timid, about joining. So I did want to know that. I think you kind of touched on it. But then I wanted to offer a little or just a few words of encouragement. So for those of us who are teachers, we know everybody that's on this call, I'm pretty sure we have that passion about children. They are our future, everything's right. And one day we're going to have to depend on them. So we know, just like Ms. Shauna is explaining, the importance of learning as much as we can and to grow and put ourselves out there on the forefront to fight for everything that the children need to be the best that they could be later on. So I just wanted to tell you guys, don't be afraid. You're going to step into an atmosphere of change and things that you've never seen before, you've never experienced before, but I can almost guarantee you, me working here at Illinois Action for Children, that it's going to be so mesmerizing, so empowering, and you're going to be doing things you thought you could never, ever do in life. You're going to see yourself on certain platforms and you're still rising, and you'll say, wait a minute, I started here. How did I get up here? I'm telling you, and it's going to happen before you know it. And then before you know it, you're that active voice doing things you never thought you would ever be able to do. You're messing around to be another Maria Whelan, and not afraid to say what you have to say, because you know the importance of the children that you have at home, your nieces, nephews. That's what all the children are that we care for every day. We look at them like family, right? So just don't be afraid, jump on out there, because we'll never know what's on the other side of the door until we open it. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Please don't be afraid, go for it. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Caprice.
I think you may have answered it, but I just want to clarify. So is the program coming from a holistic approach where it's we're advocating for the family and the children, or is this just to make sure that the kids are kindergarten ready?
So the Institute itself is not about either of those things. The Institute is really about raising up leaders within the field throughout the state. So it's really about the participants really understanding themselves as leaders and identifying the areas where they want to engage in the system and find their voice. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I thought someone else I saw come off mute, maybe. Oh, there's a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, I am school monitor right now, because before COVID, I had a full-time job as a lead teacher in a child care day center. But now with all this stuff, so I just have like you would say it's considered like a part-time because it's not the full year round from school, but I'm interested in applying for this. But the thing is that would I be able to do it or not? Because I mean, I think I will consider it a part-time, because I know you say you needed it to be full-time. So
Yeah, we prefer full-time, but every case is different. Do you feel like you are you, well, I would encourage, so there are a couple things. If you feel like you're going to be part-time in the future, like within the next couple months, it's worth applying and saying that in the application. If not, you may want to wait and then try again next year. But part of the reason we want full-time is we're trying to get folks that are fully engaged, that we know, are going to continue through the field. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have a pretty big pool of applicants. So that's one of the factors that we look at.
yeah, I mean, because yeah, because what I'm trying to get is here, well, my future goals will be just having my own daycare, because I'm always planning to. I already applied for the for to receive the application from the state. So I recently did receive it, but now, since you know how they do inspections on the house and everything, so I'm trying to clean out everything, trying to fix it. So I think it's gonna take me a while for that. So that's why
Okay.
I'm trying to get a jobs on the fields where it involves, children. So
Yep.
yeah.
Nope, I understand. I think, well, this job will count towards your 3 years of experience for sure. I think, if you need support, you're always welcome to reach out to our training team as well, who does a good job of supporting providers, even with the licensing process and all that good stuff too,
All right.
in case that's where you are. Any other, oh, there was a question in the chat about what kinds of assignments will you be required to do? I think it will vary, but the strengths finders, I think I said it right that time, is one of the first things that you'll do. And it really is for yourself to understand kind of who you are. I cannot recall if they ended up doing Myers-Briggs or any personality testing. I don't believe so, but I do believe there was another assessment. Folks have been told to sort of, um, it's not writing your personal statement, but really sort of trying to find your voice, understand your story. You might be asked to write out your story. You don't have to be forced to share it amongst the cohort group, but really, finding your voice and being empowered um, to speak and use it in order to influence for good. So one of the speakers we had, her name is Gabriella. She works for Senator Pacioni Zayas. And she talked about her own personal story and growing up. I believe she is first generation, but she talked about, she needed to translate for parents, and she was very open about the struggles that she had. I think she's the eldest in her family, and some of the barriers that they faced accessing even just school. And so she uses that experience and her story when talking with legislators about the importance of removing barriers. So sometimes folks will hear from constituents and think, well, I need to fix this. Legislators will with this particular bill, but not understand there might be repercussions or negative consequences to putting something into law versus into rule, which you get to learn more about. And so you can use your story when influencing them to say, that's great that you want to do this, but here's the impact it may have on this population in the state. Or this is a great bill. Right now, there is a bill and money appropriated for non-traditional hours care in the state. A legislator felt it was really important that we stand up center-based childcare for first responders. So that would be, fire, police, et cetera, doctors, hospitals. And the problem is what we know at Illinois Action for Children, we do research, is that parents aren't inclined to put their children in institutionalized care overnight. That's not something that's preferred. And so that's an example of legislation that needs to be like, we need to figure out how to make that work. But too many details were put into that, and not enough consulting or voice was was elevated before that legislator pushed that bill forward. And so now we have to step back and do more research and pilot and talk to parents and talk to providers about, is it really necessary to have a overnight child care center in every hospital, let's say in Illinois? And, doctors tend to, they may have a nanny, or most folks have family or friends that come and watch their kids, et cetera, if they have a third shift. And that was a legislator who was misinformed. And so this is really about helping folks who traditionally are not in advocacy roles understand how they can, in fact, influence as regular constituents of communities. So is it Deneen? Did I say that right? Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure how to quite ask my question, and I'm probably involving too many people in my question, but I need to know for my own. Okay. So last year somebody sent this to me, but I kind of missed my beat as far as the these things go, like the informationals. But I recently, as in last week, just started a new position. So I don't think that I'll be able to participate because they don't even know me well enough for me to start making requests. However, I'm still really interested, but I did hear you mention next year. I was really nervous last year because I thought maybe it was a 1-year thing. So my question is there like a projected amount of years that this is gonna go on, or are you guys gonna try to continue to have it for as long as you can, or can you say, or that's my question.
Can you repeat that? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, my dad's having, anyway, I apologize. Go
It's
ahead.
okay. My question was, I heard you mention next year. So is there like a time frame that this can continue on for the people who may have missed out last year, may miss out this year? Can you say, is it like, are you gonna try to make it like continuously, or?
It's a great question. Yeah,
Okay.
so that is a really good question. We know that there's a need to do this program for emerging leaders at this time. And so we're trying to meet that need, but funding constraints, right, are always the challenge. And so we intend to keep doing it. What may shift is that we may make a decision after this year, like let's say there's nobody left in the emerging leaders group, which we know is impossible, but let's pretend. And we say, you know what, we really should do a cohort of only family childcare. We had some family childcare providers in the last one, and we may in this one, but we might say, because this is going on in the state, we think it's really important that we structure this particular cohort only for this group or type of position. That could happen. We might make the decision, you know what, we should only have site directors at center-based facilities, et cetera. That is not our intention right now, because we really want to have it open and learn from it. We think there's value of having it cross-sector and having the diversity of positions, because when you bring it back to wherever you're from, it's more meaningful. Right. So everyone has different spheres of influence, and we think that's important to tap into. But I can't say that that won't ever change. That's not the intention. But I can't say that will change. Did that help?
I think so.
Okay.
But no, yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Right. So you're asking me, what is the risk if you wait another year? Is that really what you're asking?
Yeah,
I don't
because
think
I
there's a
literally
lot of
just
risk.
started my position on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Last Monday. So I don't know if my position is newer. I mean, the title isn't newer, but they're trying some things in my job, and I don't think I could even ask. So, but
Yeah.
I'm still interested. I'm gonna still stay abreast, but I don't.
Completely understand that. I do. I would encourage you. I mean, you've got a new job as, there's like 3 or 4 transitions that are like the highest stressors in life, right? One is like getting married, one is having a child, the other one is changing jobs, you know what I mean? Like, and then moving. And so I think, you know, I think, and probably going off to college is on that list for sure, but that's a pretty big transition. And so you really want to be taking care of yourself in that time and not be, you know, I'm just giving advice from personal experience. You know, I don't want you coming at me later saying, you told me to wait and then, but I do think I'm telling you that you should count the cost. You know, if it's going to be difficult, if there's a lot of transition, it's better to take care of yourself, you know, and learn your new role well and feel confident in that. And there will be other opportunities, even if it isn't this. You know, there's always opportunities to learn. Folks have the opportunity to participate in the We the Village Coalition, like I said, or other coalitions on the state level. So even if you're not selected in this cohort, there are still ways you can actively get involved and be engaged in creating change. Um, that is a great question, Miss Wisby. That is a great question. I am uncertain of that answer. Okay, are there any other questions that folks have? None? Okay. Maybe all of you are as tired as I am after a long, long Monday, but at least Monday is almost done. If you have questions that pop up, or if you have questions for fellows in the last cohort, please go ahead and email those to the website. It was put in the chat, not the website, the email address, Emerging Leaders 2023 at actforchildren.org. And we will try to get something out in probably not for another week, only because I want to give time for folks to be able to get those questions in. And then the application, I believe, might have been in the original email, but you will get something tomorrow, I believe, or Wednesday at the latest, that it's just an email that has a link to the application, has a link to a referral form. If you're here and you're thinking, I can't do it this year, but maybe my friend over here can do it, or you've got someone that you work with that you know could really benefit from participating, please feel free to refer them and spread the word. Okay. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us and for your interest in the MWLI Leadership Fellowship. You are welcome. Have a great evening. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Miss Shauna. Apply, everybody, apply.
You're welcome, Yolanda. Bye-bye.